Right. Being sensitive, Sai informs me the S is deliberately there. Okay. Is an art project looking at various forms of censorship and moral policing in India. What is the art inspired by, which you see in these visuals, looking for a specific place? Okay.
You're looking for a very specific answer.
I think once you said specific place, I think people understood what we were looking for.
Wow, it's a tsunami of answers right now.
Tsunami.
Yeah, is this related to the Khajuraho Temples?
Yes, it is the Khajuraho Temples. Yes.
Points to almost everyone, I think.
Everyone gets points on this. Okay, good.
Yeah. So this is an interesting project.
To joining this quiz, or is it okay to show these pictures?
We always give a disclaimer saying our content is PG-13, so whatever movies get classified under that should come in same piece.
Right.
But essentially, this is an interesting art project that started by a Bangalore student, which is inspired by the art of Khajuraho Temples. Right? She was basically a student of the Srishti Institute in Bangalore, and she started this campaign where she was trying to talk about the moral policing in India and different incidents in the last 10-20 years. Right. So this art form is a fairly interesting device that she's created, inspired by the art form at Khajuraho, but specifically on the subject of Section 377. Similarly, there's another artwork that she's created, which was specifically on the incident of more than 40 couples who were taken out of private hotel rooms in Lonavala and other parts of Maharashtra and booked for public indecency. This is an interesting piece. So there was a controversy regarding mannequins being banned because they were displayed with lingerie. So this is using the statues of Khajuraho temples on the same subject. And every Valentine's Day, Shiv Sena comes into the news because they beat up couples in parks. So this is a piece of work that's created inspired by that. For those of you, we'll send you the link to Akshasha Chandra's very detailed project called Being Sensitive. You can check it out on her page as well as a couple of other blogs as well.
Speaking about censorship, and as I said, censorship is not unique to either a political party or to any specific country in that sense, especially with this. And it brought to mind the statue of David when it was visiting London. The prudish Victorian society decided that something had to be done about David, and they created these plaster of Paris fig leaves, which would be placed over delicate areas of these statues, literally, for making suitable for viewing. And there was an artist as well, if I was telling, I couldn't remember his name, but his nickname was the Breeches Maker, and he was employed by the Vatican to cover up the nude paintings done by Michelangelo as well. So there were the paintings on, I don't know whether it's Il Bragattoni, there we go, Il Bragattoni. His nickname is, it stands for the Breeches Maker, because he used to paint breeches and pants on all those nude male paintings of Michelangelo's in the Vatican. I like this point. If only the British can flaunt their crown jewels, there's someone.
I'm a translator basically, and I'd contacted a French publisher to discuss translating a graphic novel that touched upon Indian mythology in some ways. And the first thing I got was a panicked email from the publisher saying, "Oh, this does touch upon Indian mythology, and it has a few nude figures in the panels. Do you think the Indian government today will allow you to work on this?" And I was just thinking, you've got a very, from the Khajuraho temple to the other extreme, where a tiny French publisher with about 5 titles to their name, is very aware of things that can or cannot be published in India today that touch upon mythology and interest.
No, I'm not going to say that that's a comment on the Indian government or anything. I think that's just the general stereotypical idea that Europeans have of Indians. Either we are beggars or we are prudish or things like that. I've seen that reaction come from people even several years ago when the government was completely different. So I'm going to say that's just the French trying to be French.
Possibly, but they did name the government, so
yeah. That's just the way the die was cast. You wrote now. I think if you had written 10 years ago, they would still have had the same reaction.
I mean, I don't have much to say about censorship, but since this question involved mannequins, I mean, purely by coincidence, my last article from Saturday in Economic Times was actually about mannequins. And there's actually a very fascinating history of human interactions with mannequins in many different directions. And one of the more curious ones, which is very Bombay specific, is that Bombay has this particular type of puja called Satyanarayan Puja, which is something that started in the mill lands. And very curiously, the mill lands are also where many of the mannequins used in retail shops across India were made. And now, as part of Satyanarayan Puja, these mannequins have become part of the ritual, and it's one of these very interesting ways in which Indian religions appropriate objects.
The mannequins have become part of religion.
This particular ritual called Satyanarayan Puja.
Satyanarayan Puja. Okay.
So there's these Japanese nude porcelain figures which were used by these doctors. When their patients came, when female patients came, they will be embarrassed to point out where their problem is. So what these patients would do, they would use these nude porcelain figures to say that, yeah, I have a problem here, and by that way, the doctor would be able to understand,
what the problem was. Okay.
Yeah, what the problem is.
One of the people who's had the most long-lasting impacts on reducing censorship in India is Boris Becker, because he had a really famous photograph on Sports Illustrated, I think, which then got challenged in court, and then finally rejecting what the British standard was before, that obscenity is whatever an individual sees or whatever the judge sees, and we ended up looking at contextual obscenity of pornography. I mean, it's interesting that how Boris Becker ended up changing the rule in India.
That kind of censorship extended even to, by association, to music as well. If you know, All India Radio at that time in the 50s, there was this Information and Broadcasting Minister Benin Kerkar who actually banned a certain instrument because it was associated with kothas and faith. So as someone says here on the chat, yes, I didn't mention the name of the instrument. Here it is, the harmonium. The harmonium was banned.